When workshopping this video, I was expecting to be really critical of Katana Zero. I remember playing it and being left disappointed, but I sat down to record footage of the game for this video, and honestly I ended up playing a lot longer than I expected I would. It just has a really fun and satisfying gameplay loop that on its own is just good. There are a lot of indie games that define genres, or that have a huge cultural impact, or that have a deep and compelling narrative that leaves you thinking. There are indie games that are important, and Katana Zero isn't one of them. But at the end of the day, it's pretty darn good. Here's why. You're an assassin who works for some mysterious organization and eliminates targets. But you also have the ability to alter time to a limited extent, which we'll talk about from a mechanics perspective later. This mechanic has a big impact on the overall narrative of the game, and it ties into the story in a really interesting way. As the story unfolds, you learn more and more about the protagonist, and they do a great job of world building in such a short amount of time. In between jobs, you go back to your apartment, sleep, and then talk to your therapist the next day. You'll often have really weird dreams that hint at a lot of plot elements, but always keep you guessing. And you'll talk about these dreams, among other things, with your therapist, who is also your handler that assigned you jobs. Seems like a conflict of interest, I know. During jobs and in between, you'll be presented with dialogue options. These have no greater impact on the story or longer plot, but they do have little things that can change, and they don't feel meaningless by any means. This game lacks multiple endings, which isn't technically true, as there is one alternate ending, but that alternate ending is just kind of trash and results in you seeing less content, and it doesn't give you anything in exchange. The story you're presented with, you have no matter of impacting. It'll play out how it plays out, with very minor changes based on dialogue options, but the ending you get is the same as everyone else's. This isn't necessarily a flaw, as the story you see is compelling, and it does a great job of leaving enough questions to keep you guessing while feeding enough information that you don't feel lost. If you like 2D pixel graphic games, you'll like what you're looking at. The sprite work is good, although it isn't anything jaw-dropping or unique. It's what you'd expect out of pixel graphics, and in no way does it detract from the game. But it isn't really a selling point either. The dedication to the retro VHS style is admirable, and the game feels inspired slightly from 80s cyberpunk. The UI is competent, but again, nothing to write home about. Generally speaking, looking at this game, it looks like there was care put into every pixel, and it was made by someone with talent, but overall it doesn't really stand out on its own. Oh, but something does tie it all in. Something really just makes it all come together and feel beautiful. The sound design. The music in this game is beautiful and emotional, and it does a great job at setting the tone. The sound effects for the menus and transitions make the UI pop. The sound effects for enemies are satisfying and consistent. I can block or dodge a bullet based off the sound cue, and the ping I get when I reflect one back is the most satisfying noise in the game. Truly, the sound design stands out and really helps make the game feel special. Katana Zero is a side-scrolling action game where everything, including yourself, dies in one hit. This almost turns it into a puzzle of how to solve each room. Narratively, they tie the story into the mechanics by framing each attempt at a room as part of the character's time powers, where he's testing possibilities for how to handle each mission. And only when you complete the room does he get it right. The game also has a slowdown mode that lets you freeze time almost to a halt, to let you react faster than humanly possible. Then, when you complete the room, you see security tape footage of you going through successfully in real time. If you die, you just get sent to start the room again. This is a solid gameplay loop. Running through each room and testing options while getting to know the layout and the enemy placement is all extremely satisfying and addictive. You never get too frustrated with your deaths because you almost immediately get to try again. The game never lets you get comfortable though, as everything kills you in one hit. Sure, there's just a skinny dude with a crowbar left who you've killed thousands of after you've destroyed an entire room of armed gunmen, but if you aren't paying attention, he can kick you right back to the start, same as anyone else. You'll pick it up only meaning to play for a short bit, but find yourself sucked in, wanting to play more. This game isn't without its faults though. The biggest flaw of this game comes down to length. I beat the game in 4 hours without trying to go too fast, and while still going back and redoing some missions just for fun. I would never say a game isn't worth its price though, because how valuable money is differs from person to person, and what each person wants out of a game is different. You should be aware that this is a short game though. It does have great replay value, but it definitely feels a little bit too short. I was actually surprised when the game ended, as I thought there was going to be a lot left. The story didn't have a super satisfying conclusion. It actually felt like it was left intentionally open for plans for a sequel, but it kind of came across as though the developers might not have had the funds to do as much as they wanted with the game and ended up calling it quits a little bit early. The game also introduced a lot of unique ideas and levels that were never fully explored. I'm going to refrain from narrative spoilers, but what follows is light mechanical spoilers. There's one level where you play as another character who has his own unique mechanics. He can't pick up items to throw, but his throw button is replaced with this kind of anime dash where he teleports to a location and kills everything in a line from his origin point to his destination. This ability has a cooldown though, and while it's on cooldown, you can't use your sword. This creates a really new and interesting challenge and requires you to think about the game in ways you hadn't before. It was by far my favorite level in the game, and it was just really interesting. But it's just that. A level. I was expecting you to get to play more with this character or play other characters with their own abilities, but you don't. Just him. Just then. There's also a stealth level. Just one. Getting out of vision is a common tactic through many levels, but every level other than this one requires you to kill every enemy on screen in order to progress. But even in this level, stealth is only an option. You actually get no benefit or incentive to do it stealthily. A couple lines of dialogue change if you do, but other than that, the game is completely the same. It's much easier to finish the level without stealth, honestly. It feels like they were afraid to commit to this mechanic and just left it as optional. Another problem is the action feels very weirdly paced. I don't mean like story pacing, I mean the speed of combat. See, time stopping is actually completely optional. Speedrunners completely ignore this mechanic as it will only slow them down. Through general knowledge of how the AI works and sound cues, you can deflect and dodge bullets and attacks without ever stopping time. It's not even that hard either. This isn't something where it's only for the best players who are out there speedrunning. In my first playthrough, I was able to clear many rooms without stopping time. Even the hardest enemies I could take down without using the time mechanic, and I'm usually pretty bad at most games that require quick reflexes, honestly. It's basically just you have to listen for the audio cue and then press X. So this puts the slowdown in a really weird spot because it actually feels too slow. It feels almost patronizing. I found myself not using the slowdown mechanic, which is the unique main mechanic of the game, just because it was too slow and got kind of boring. I found myself preferring the fast-paced combat that was actually a lot more tense. But this has another negative impact. Those security tapes. After each room, it shows you your run in real time. This feels sort of inspired by Superhot, but it doesn't work nearly as well. In Superhot, I'd watch the replay every time. It was always exciting, because in real time, it's not actually possible to do the things that happen. Only through the slow motion is it possible to beat all of the levels and kill every enemy, so when you watch it in real time for the first time, it looks so cool. But in Katana Zero, it just seems, I don't know, like, kind of normal. Like, there are times where I would just do the room in real time, and then I'd watch it again and just think, yeah, I just did that. It's not that impressive. So I'd skip the tapes after each level, which isn't a huge inconvenience or anything, but I had just expected the levels to be so difficult that watching them in real time would actually look really cool. Honestly, it just doesn't. The game did add in a hard mode, though, with a big update, which was mainly focused on speedrunning. I only played a bit of the hard mode, but it is legitimately fun. I just think that the issues with the combat run deeper than the number of enemies on the screen and enemy variety. Putting a turret in the first level won't fix this fundamental pacing issue. It just takes me a few more tries to finish the level. All in all, Katana Zero is an amazing first game for the studio. It's worth playing and beating, and I think you'll find a lot of enjoyment in it, but I don't think it'll have a lasting impact. Katana Zero is a good game. It's not great.